Welcome to Ezra Levant's Battleground. It's April 30th, and I am Ezra Levant. Battleground, what is that? It is a new thing. Every day at 12 noon Eastern until 1 p.m., we're going to have a live video podcast chat. I just put all those words together, but basically what it means is instead of pre-taping a show like I do for my 8 p.m. show every day behind the paywall, we're going to have a publicly available chat, and Google has a term for it. They call it a super chat, which means you, as viewers, can write your comments, as so many YouTubers do, and if you want your comment to be pinned to the top of the screen, you can pay a couple bucks, and it's called a Super Chat comment, and it stays up there. And my goal is to read as many of the Super Chat comments as I can, if you can get a comment in edgewise while I am talking about the battles of the day. So it's not just an open battle where you get to battle me with your questions. I'm going to talk about stories today, including what I think is an amazing story over the last few days, which is the White House Correspondents Association annual press club dinner in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump himself did not attend. He rather had a rally in Michigan, but many of his senior aides did. We'll talk about that total meltdown, and I will turn my eye to the Super Chat screen and read out super comments as they come in. So I'm going to be looking at my screen on my computer here, but I'm also going to be looking at the camera. I have an earpiece, so our team here will tell me if there is a super chat. By the way, if you can't watch this live between noon and 1 p.m. Eastern every day, don't worry. It will be uploaded for review later, and it'll be in podcast form. The only downside to tuning in that way is you can't super chat. I'm going to say that word super chat about 50 times, but without further ado, I want to talk about this White House Correspondents' Dinner, or as so many people on Twitter call it, nerd prom, but I don't think that that's a fair statement. Nerds or geeks, they're actually, you know, they're just a little socially awkward, but they have some redeeming value. I mean, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, you could say they were nerds or geeks, but they weren't the kind of, well, to borrow the phrase from Dave Berg, the kind of garbage people that operate in the media party's highest levels, who full of self-regard for themselves. And every year the White House Correspondents' Dinner gets worse and worse and worse, and Trump knew it, and he stayed away. But this one was so bad, even some liberal journalists afterwards were trying to distance themselves from it, saying it was just over the top, it was gross, it was, I mean, of course it was profane and obscene, but I mean, that comes with comedy, I think, but it was just so unfunny. It was just Democrat talking points with a laugh track over it, but the laugh track was provided by the White House correspondents themselves. And that's my first point. I'm going to play 4 clips for you today. But my first point is, all of these liberal journalists who the day after, when seeing how poorly this was received, are washing their hands of it and saying, no, I don't like how that went. I watched the full 20-odd minute video of the comedian's take. They were laughing, they were chanting along. There was a call and repeat. Donald Trump is broke. How broke is he? Like weird stuff, weird stuff. It was full audience participation. So don't buy it when they say, oh, no, this wasn't representative of us. It absolutely was. I want to play, I've got 5 clips for you. And what strikes me is how the comedian, her name was Michelle Wolf, put aside for a second that she was unfunny. Most of her attacks were against women around Donald Trump. Sure, she took a few shots at Trump himself, including the weirdest one, that he's not a rich man. That's just a weird thing to attack him on. There was 1 or 2 shots at Mike Pence, but other than some token shots at the president and vice president, her vitriol, her rage, was focused on any women around Donald Trump. Don't you think that's weird? I'm going to start with clip number 2, a weird attack on Kellyanne Conway, first woman to chair a successful presidential campaign, successful pollster in her own right, great pundit, busy mom. I mean, just such an accomplished woman. Take a look at how Michelle Wolf takes a run at Kellyanne Conway.
on your shows. All she does is lie. If you don't give her a platform, she has nowhere to lie. It's like that old saying, if a tree falls in the woods, how do we get Kellyanne under that tree? I'm not suggesting she gets hurt, just stuck. Stuck under a tree.
You know, I mean, I guess that's sort of funny. I just think she should be stuck under a tree. But the first part there, why do you put, I mean, I'm not going to try and do her screechy voice. I think that's the only comedic effect here is her screechy voice. Is it really funny to say, why do you guys put Kellyanne Conway on TV? All she does is lie. I mean, I like jokes. I like funny anti-Trump jokes. And I think there's probably some funny jokes to be made about Kellyanne Conway. There's funny jokes to be made about everyone in politics. But just sort of screeching, why do you put her on TV? All she does is lie. Why are you letting her lie? I just don't think that's even funny. And it's what Rob Schneider said about Saturday Night Live the other day. Saturday Night Live has always made fun of politicians, and it's always tilted to the left. But it's never been so angry and rageful. I thought he was very astute when he pointed out that Dana Carvey, when he mocked George H.W. Bush, he did it with a little bit of underlying affection for Bush's humanity. He didn't hate Bush when he mocked him. Alec Baldwin is so full of spit-flecked fury when he does Donald Trump. It's just not funny anymore. You can be a funny liberal. This ain't that. All right, I want to move to the next clip. And this keeps with the theme of despising women. And I think the most vicious attacks in politics against women are by women. And what's so funny is this Michelle Wolf, the comedian. I think she styles herself as a feminist. I think so. So she took a run at Ivanka Trump. Ivanka, in my mind, is almost like a first lady. I mean, Melania Trump obviously is the first lady, but she's pretty low key. She's pretty quiet. I've never heard Melania talk about anything political in public at all. Ivanka's a little bit more engaged, so she's sort of like a surrogate first lady in that way, but very inoffensive, never takes on prickly issues. Take a look at how Michelle Wolf, the hired, recruited entertainer for the White House Correspondents' Dinner, here's her take on Ivanka Trump.
There's also, of course, Ivanka. She was supposed to be an advocate for women, but it turns out she's about as helpful to women as an empty box of tampons. She's done nothing to satisfy women. So I guess, like father, like daughter. Oh, you don't think he's good in bed. Come on. She does clean up nice, though. Ivanka cleans up nice. She's the diaper genie of the administration. On the outside, she looks sleek, but the inside, it's still full of shit.
So it's gross. I mean, like an empty box of tampons. I guess that's feminist humor. And the joke there at the end, you're like a diaper genie, shiny on the outside, inside you're full of shit. I don't think that's a joke. I think that could be a building block in a larger joke. If there was something there, that's just sort of a generic insult you could throw at anyone. You're full of shit, to quote her. I mean, you could theoretically have said that about anyone. There was no substance there other than this comedian was saying she's not woman enough or has let down women. So it's just a generic anti-female insult, I think, and it's not funny. I think that's the greatest crime committed here. It just wasn't funny. I got a question for you before I move on to the next clip. Would that generic anti-female insult be applied against any Democratic Party woman, against Michelle Obama, against Malia Obama, against I think the answer is obvious. It would be no. I want to read two more clips before I do. Let me just take a minute to remind you what we're doing. Today is the soft launch of Ezra Levant's Battleground. We didn't announce it. We didn't even tweet it. We didn't email about it. We just sort of snuck it in here because we're trying it out. I hope people like it. The idea is take an hour in the middle of the day, do a live chat, take comments by Super Chat, play some video clips, and throw it on a podcast afterwards. So if you like it, let me know. We'll roll it out tomorrow. I think if things go well today, we'll announce it a bit, we'll tweet it. But we're just testing our systems, and I hope you like it. I want to move to the next clip. This comedian, Michelle Wolf is her name, took an extended run at Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who is Donald Trump's press secretary. I think she does a pretty good job as press secretary. It's sort of impossible it's an impossible job. And the burnout and the turnover rate in any country for the chief spokesman of a politically controversial leader is extremely high. I mean, in Canada, every year under Stephen Harper, I mean, you get worn out, you replace it. In Donald Trump, I think this is the third person. I think she does a pretty fair job. So what's the criticism of her? I put it to you, it's the same as the criticism of Kellyanne Conway or Ivanka Trump. There's no substantive criticism other than, well, if it was a conservative doing what would be called anti-female bigotry or misogyny. Take a look at this first clip of Michelle Wolf attacking Sarah Sanders.
And of course we have Sarah Huckabee Sanders. We are graced with Sarah's presence tonight. I have to say I'm a little starstruck. I love you as Aunt Lydia on The Handmaid's Tale. Mike Pence, if you haven't seen it, you would love it. Every time Sarah steps up to the podium, I get excited because I'm not really sure what we're gonna get. You know, a press briefing, a bunch of lies, or divided into softball teams. It's shirts and skins, and this time don't be such a little bitch, Jim Acosta.
I'm just waiting for the funny, though. I'm waiting for the funny. I think there should be a lot of room to make fun of the press secretary for Donald Trump. I mean, if I had to do it, I'm a Trump sympathizer. If I had to think of a way to make fun, it could be trying to explain some of Donald Trump's funnier, quirkier, more outrageous, more offensive tweets. And I mean, she's got a very tough job, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. That's a rich vein to mine if you're looking for comedy. But again, what was the joke? I mean, and I'm not even going to try and mock that voice. I think that's her only shtick, is her voice. If the only thing she can come up with is, I don't know, are we in for a pack of lies? Well, that's what she said about Kellyanne Conway. Why do you let her lie? She's a liar. And Sarah Huckabee Sanders just a pack of lies. It's just not funny. That's the big crime so far. Yeah, it's an attack on all the women around Trump in the name of feminism, weird tampon jokes, weird diaper jokes, but it's just not funny. But look at this. Look at this next one here. Here's a woman who's not exactly the most comely of entertainers, Michelle Wolf, who's only 32. If you would have told me she was 52, I would have believed it. And the only reason I'm remarking on her own appearance is, well, that's how she took a run at Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Take a look at this next clip.
I actually really like Sarah. I think she's very resourceful. Like, she burns facts, and then she uses that ash to create a perfect smoky eye. Like, maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's lies. It's probably lies. And I'm never really sure what to call Sarah Huckabee Sanders. You know, is it Sarah Sanders? Is it Sarah Huckabee Sanders? Is it Cousin Huckabee? Is it Auntie Huckabee Sanders? Like, what's Uncle Tom but for white women who disappoint other white women? Oh, I know, Aunt Coulter.
A few things here again, just the lies. She makes it lie. I mean, yeah, we get it. You know, first of all, I think there's probably some truth that every press secretary for every president in history has told some spin, some half-truths, and probably even some lies. I get it. But if you're just standing up there and in your screeching tone saying, lies, she's just a liar, it's very tiresome, and it's, you know, being a comedian is more than just Democratic Party talking points with a laugh track. Now, she went on a little bit longer about, I guess I cut the clip a little short, about different names to call Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and she referred to the TV show The Handmaid's Tale, which is about a mythical Christian theocracy, a misogynist theocracy. Of course, there are misogynist theocracies in the world. they're Muslim, like the Islamic Republic of Iran or the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. But there was a particular insult, and I don't think I have the clip here. I'm sorry, I chose the time codes wrong. She compared Sarah Huckabee Sanders to Aunt Lydia of this show, The Handmaid's Tale. Let me just put that picture up on the screen for a second. So that's Aunt Lydia, and here's the media spin. That Handmaid's Tale joke at the White House Correspondents' Dinner was not a slam on Sarah Sanders' looks. Well, yes, it was, and that's the very reason why you're writing this spin. Who's the liar now? And my point is, every attack so far on the women around Trump, Ivanka Trump, Kellyanne Conway, or Sarah Sanders, has been personal, has been female in its targeting, and in the case of Sarah Huckabee Sanders, has been about her makeup, her look, and actually comparing her to a manly, ugly woman on Handmaid's Tale, a theocratic, stern woman. I give full marks to Sarah Huckabee Sanders for standing there and not taking the and not rising to the bait, not walking out, sitting there and absorbing the punishment, as Donald Trump did at a previous White House Correspondents' Dinner, the one where they all mocked him and Barack Obama himself said, "You'll never be president." Trump stood there and he took the blows. And in some ways it was very un-Trump-like, wasn't it? For Trump to sit there and take barbs and insults and not fight back. But Trump's no dummy. Trump knew that everyone watching the abuse hurled on him by the fancy people, every severely normal American and Canadian and people around the world who saw that, they thought, she's talking about me too. She's insulting me too. She's smearing me too. Every woman who would even consider voting for Donald Trump or Republicans surely felt the sting of those remarks. Every woman, whether or not they're Republican, who maybe isn't as beautiful as Michelle Wolf, the comedian with the screechy voice, probably thought, oh, well, if you're taking a run at her for her looks, I mean, she's doing the best with what she has. She's put together well enough. And she was obviously hired for her talent and not because she's a centerfold knockout. So the fact that Michelle Wolf is attacking her based on her appearance, even though, I mean, she's quite respectable and was hired for merit, the fact that the fancy people took a run at her for how she looked, and Kellyanne Conway and Ivanka Trump as well, don't you think the rest of us watching that would say, they hated her, they will hate me too? And I think the grace with which Sarah Huckabee Sanders stood there and took it was actually the highlight of the evening. Now, I think you may have seen some of these clips on the internet or elsewhere, especially the personal attacks against Sarah Huckabee Sanders. And I say again, after the video got out and it was just a shock to flyover country, to severely normal Americans, I mean, a lot of the fancy folks who were at the dinner later said, oh, no, I totally disagree with that. I renounce it. I separate myself from it. Maggie Haberman of the New York Times said that. I should tell you, I watched the entire 20-odd minute video, and it was full of applause. I say again, the Michelle Wolf led the audience in a call and response. They were active participants, and I saw a tweet today. A couple of MSNBC journalists said they were appalled by what went on. Not appalled enough to skip the after party, though. They went to the after party and totally hung out with Michelle Wolf. That's how furious they were at things. Now, what we've been looking at so far are the personal attacks on the women around Trump, done by a woman herself. And I guess that's the Democrat way. God forbid a woman wants to be a Republican like Kanye West. God forbid a black man even criticizes the Democrats. Kanye West is not a Republican. As he said the other day, he doesn't even know if he's a conservative. But the fact that he dares question the Democrats, he's fair game for every smear around. Same thing with Republican women, isn't it? I want to show you, though, a 15-second clip, and this is my last clip from the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I want to show you what I thought was actually a more telling reminder of how the White House correspondents are out of sync with America. Let me just play it. It's a clip on abortion. It's only 15 seconds. Take a look at this.
Mike Pence is also very anti-choice. He thinks abortion is murder, which, first of all, don't knock it till you try it. And when you do try it, really knock it. You know, you got to get that baby out of there.
Now, I'm not sure why that's a comedy routine at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I'm not sure what that has to do with journalism. I'm not sure what that has to do with even poking fun at Trump or others. That's just a plain old Planned Parenthood ad. But the thing about moderate pro-choicers, I'd say, is they say it's a choice, but they realize it's an awful choice. They realize that aborting a baby does stop a beating heart, and it's a terrible thing, and it's not optimal. But the argument from moderate pro-choicers is, but it's better than the alternative. And you can dispute that, and I would. But this is not a pro-choice argument. This is a pro-abortion argument that's just having a lot of fun about abortion. Don't knock it till you try it, and really knock it. You got to get that baby out of there. Apropos of nothing, I think is my first comment, just out of there. Applause, maybe a few groans, but just the normalization and the laughification, I'm making up a word, of that completely tone deaf. I think that for most Americans and Canadians and people around the world, abortion is a tough issue, a morally wrenching issue, a difficult issue, and both sides understand the toughness of it. If you're pro-life, you understand there are some cases where the woman involved is in desperate straits. There may have been a rape, there may have been extreme poverty, there may be a child that's disabled. It's very tough morally from a pro-life point of view, and it's very tough from a pro-choice point of view, or it should be to abort a baby, but not for Michelle Wolf, who thinks it's a hilarious thing to joke about. And I say again, apropos of nothing. That's really got nothing to do with taking a run at Trump or Pence or Kellyanne Conway or Sarah Huckabee Sanders. It's just a little paid announcement by the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And the fact that weirdness, that macabre celebration of abortion, which no moderate pro-choicer should ever celebrate. What's the pro-choice phrase? Safe, legal, and rare. Isn't that the pro-choice phrase? We want to be safe, legal, and rare. That's not what Michelle Wolf said, and I know she was joking, but like I say with the rest of her comments, jokes should be funny. And I don't think this was, but more than that, I think it showed where the moral and political center is for the press corps that lords it over the rest of us. I think it was a disaster for them. It reminded me so many ways of the disastrous Oscars, except for the Oscars at least have beautiful people, and the comedians are sort of funny. This was a poor man's, ugly man's Oscars. I don't even think it would show up in the ratings. I mean, Jimmy Kimmel's Oscars this year had the lowest ratings in that show's history. I don't think there are ratings for the White House Correspondents' Dinner, but if there were, how could this possibly show up? Those are my 5 videos I wanted to show you from the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Let me talk again about what we're doing today. It's sort of something we thought we would just slide into. You're watching sort of a, well, I would call it a beta test, a test run. Soft launch is another way to say it. We didn't even tell anyone we were doing this. We just thought, let's just do it. Let's see if anyone watches. Let's see if anyone participates. It's a live podcast. We're doing it every day if it works out, from 12 noon till 1 p.m. Eastern. Just in the middle of my day. I mean, my show that I do every night at 8 p.m., I pre-recorded. It's a little bit more produced. It's scripted, so I'm not rambly. But the fun stuff of having it on this Google Super Chat is that you can chat to me in real time. Anyone can make a comment. And if you want your Super Chat to be pinned to the top, you can kick in a couple bucks and make a comment. And I think I saw one sneak by. I was looking at the camera. I think I saw one come by, but I don't think there was a comment attached to it. I'll ask her. I don't think that there was one attached to it. So we're going to have this live every day, and then we're going to put it up as a regular YouTube video that can be rewatched later, and as a podcast. I see there's 369 people watching now, which is not bad, but I'm hoping that if we promote it a little bit, we'll get those numbers up, because we've got a lot of YouTube viewers. One of the things is we put out so many YouTube videos that sometimes people, I think, say it's a little overwhelming. We do 10 to 15 a day, as opposed to some of my heroes in the world of YouTube, like, for example, Paul Joseph Watson, who does a few a week, and they're so good and so special. Everyone who's a follower of his makes sure they watch all of them, whereas with us, we have a lot of videos. So we'll see if this can punch through, because we have over 900,000 subscribers. I don't know if it's the kind of thing they're looking for. I'm going to turn to some of the comments that are coming in right now. They're not super chat comments. They're just regular comments. I'm just going to pick a couple out of the blue. The term Islamophobia was created by the Muslim Brotherhood in 1984. Now Canada is imposing a law to protect the invaders while rejecting Christianity. That's from Pastor Phil Biggs. You're referring to a motion in Canada's Parliament called M103. Now, it was a motion, not a bill, and by that I mean it was just a statement calling on the government of Canada to study Islamophobia, and indeed the government did. They had this committee that studied it for months and published a huge report. That report does not yet have the force of law, but it does crystallize the government's thinking. There's some terrifying recommendations in there, including mandatory training for any professional in Canada, where you're a doctor, a lawyer, a pharmacist, or an engineer. You have to be trained in Islamophobia. Media training, not just for journalists, but for the public. Permanent anti-Islamophobia bureaucracies with permanent budgets to justify a perpetual ongoing hate crime hunt. There's even a call for a national Islamophobia day. I'm not making that up. That's all in there. There's about 30 recommendations. They have not yet been put into the form of law. It'll be interesting to see if they are. I think they will be, and I think, in fact, the Liberal Party, Justin Trudeau in particular, and his many Muslim cabinet ministers will want to make this a defining issue in the 2019 election. I think that will happen. So we'll have to see what happens there. But it is not yet law. But we do have other laws in Canada. We have human rights commissions, and I myself was dragged in front of one, the Alberta Human Rights Commission, about a dozen years ago, for publishing the Danish cartoons of Mohammed. And that was done before Islamophobia was really a big thing. That was just a law that was on the books in my home province of Alberta for decades. And it was just some radical imam born in Pakistan, did the madrasa circuit, just thought, oh, there's an illiberal tool just lying around, let me take it and use it to attack this liberal democracy that I'm in. So this Pakistani-born Muslim radical used an old illiberal law in the books to come after me in the Western Standard magazine for almost 3 years. So even without this latest M103 motion, there was an Islamophobic law in the books. I see another super chat, Victoria Pisano, I'll read it. Please try to make more videos on YouTube. It's difficult to be subscribed to you, InfoWars, Tommy Robinson, etc., and try to follow your channels to your personal websites. It's a lot to take in. You're so right. And I was just talking to my friends here about some of the sites I go to all the time. There's, I mentioned Paul Joseph Watson. I'm a super fan. Tommy Robinson was a real star with us. Now he's independent. His videos are excellent. They're not as frequent as they were, but they're very powerful, and I remain a strong moral supporter of Tommy. There's other talent. In fact, there's an up-and-comer in Canada named Spencer Fernando. He's based in Winnipeg. I really like what he says and does. There's another talent in the Toronto area named Jill Colton. So I think one of the things we can do at The Rebel is embed their YouTube videos into our page. And what I mean by that is, I'm not sure how familiar you are with YouTube, but it's built to be shared and plugged in. So they would be branded Tommy Robinson, Paul Joseph Watson, Spencer Fernando, Jill Colton. Stephen Crowder still does some great ones. They would be branded that way, but they would just be in our website as found content. We do a bit of that right now. I don't know if you know, but every day we, for example, have a list of stories from around the web, including some videos on the issue of the Islamification of the West. And the compiler, the aggregator there, his name is Victor Laszlo is the name he goes by. So we do some of that aggregation work right now. And the plus side of the people that we embed is they still get all the clicks from the traffic. So if you're watching a Paul Joseph Watson video that's embedded on the Rebel website, Paul will still get his 1/10 of a cent per view or whatever it is. So that's a good idea, and I think we should do more of that. You're right. I mean, just to remember to go to everyone's YouTube pages is live. I'm going to read another comment. Again, if you want to make a super chat, you can. I will try to read. There's only been a couple of them so far, but I'll read some of the regular chats as well. Annette Lang, Spencer Fernandez, and Jill Colton are awesome. Yeah, it's Spencer Fernando. He's from Winnipeg. I like him more and more. Just very solid, reliable, conservative, very quick. He turns things around quickly. I like him. I've invited him to participate, but he told me he's very busy getting his own show going, but he said we should feel free to embed his video, so I think we should do that more. Morgana Dundee says, still waiting on Trudeau apologizing for the hijab hoax. You're so right. For those who aren't familiar with that, I guess a couple months ago now, an 11 or 12-year-old Muslim girl who wore a hijab claimed that she was attacked on her walk to school by a man with a pair of scissors who came up to her and very quietly started cutting her hijab. Didn't swear at her, just came up to her because what guy doesn't walk around carrying scissors looking to cut a hijab? And apparently he went away and came back and did it again. And he was very careful not to poke her. It was just such a weird story. And this 11-year-old came to the school and they called police. And what would you do if there's a crazy guy out there with scissors attacking little girls with scissors? Well, you would put the school on lockdown, probably, like close the doors, call the police, maybe call in the mom, have the kid protected, hunt for the perpetrator, but that is not what the school did. The school had a press conference, and not just that, they put this 11 and 12-year-old girl in the middle of a national press conference. You don't do that. First of all, you just identify the girl's name and face and details to the perp who was still allegedly at large. And why are you putting an 11-year-old girl in front of the National Press Corps anyways? What about privacy? What about the fact that she's just a girl? But so many strange things. Her little brother was laughing and smiling the whole time. Everyone seemed to be tonally wrong. And then this girl said it was an Asian man, and that was just weird. I think she was prepped, coached to say Caucasian, but what 11-year-old knows the word Caucasian? So she probably heard Asian. I mean, it was so clearly fake, but my God, did everyone love that narrative. Justin Trudeau, Kathleen Wynne, John Tory, the Prime Minister, Premier, and Mayor all tweeted about it. It was 100 news stories, but the following week the police said it was all a hoax. Unfortunately, the mother has not yet been charged with filing a false police report, which is a crime in Canada. But we set up a petition called hijabhoax.com asking for the mother to be investigated. About 50,000 signatures, which is enormous. And what was so interesting is I'd say about half those signatures were from Chinese Canadians who felt especially unfairly blamed, named, and shamed in this hoax. I mean, my hunch is that this 11 or 12-year-old Muslim girl was coached to say Caucasian because that's the narrative, angry white man versus saintly hijabi Muslim. But she said Asian, and I should tell you that there have been protests coast to coast in this country by Chinese Canadians outraged at the fact that Trudeau and others smeared the Chinese community and never apologized or corrected. I should say that when I was out in Calgary a couple of weekends ago at the pro-pipeline rally, a member of the Chinese community came to me there specifically to thank us for pushing back on that. I think it really hurt the Chinese Canadian community, who is so law-abiding and so un-troublemaking, to be falsely accused of doing something like this. And it was one thing when it was an 11-year-old girl and her mom, but when the Prime Minister himself did it, I think that deeply hurt them. I mean, I have to tell you, I've rarely seen a story with such legs. We're watching Ezra Levant's Battleground. It's the first time we're doing it. We sort of didn't tell anyone we're doing it. We were just sort of sneaked it on YouTube to see how it was working. What a super chat means you can comment in real time because this is a live broadcast. If you want your comment pinned to the top of the page, you can chip in a couple of bucks and it'll happen. Otherwise, I'll just randomly select. Jonathan Bryant says, saw interview with Brad Trost. Nice to see federal conservatives willing to talk to the rebel. Well, Jonathan, that's the thing about Brad Trost. He is a conservative MP. I'd say he's a very conservative MP, and he did well in the conservative leadership race. He did come on our show, and we had a good hearty conversation about a number of things, including his situation in the party. I didn't want to get too deeply into it, but he will not be running as a Conservative candidate in the next election because he did not win his nomination, and he's actually involved in some litigation against the party itself, not the parliamentary caucus, but the party. And I think that's why he came on the show, because he doesn't care about party discipline or what Andrew Scheer says, because I think Andrew Scheer has put a fatwa on the Rebel not to have any of his MPs come on the show. Now, I know some of them want to, they chat with us, they give us tips, they talk to us, but Andrew Scheer has told any Conservative MP who comes on the Rebel, even just to be interviewed about a news item, that they will be punished. Andrew Scheer will punish any Conservative MP who wants to come on the Rebel to talk to any of our people, me, Sheila Gunn-Reid, David Menzies, anyone. It's a punishment. Andrew Scheer doesn't put that punishment on anyone talking to any other media that I know of, not to state-owned media like RT, Russia Today, not to the CBC, home of Jian Ghomeshi, home of every left-wing extremist, home of David Suzuki. If you do an interview on the CBC, the home of Jian Ghomeshi or David Suzuki, Andrew Scheer won't mind one bit because he'll do the interview right behind you. But if you talk to the Rebel, Andrew Scheer won't abide it. I should say it's the same thing with Jason Kenney in Alberta. We had a United Conservative Party MLA named Drew Barnes who agreed to come to our rally. When Jason Kenney found out about it, he threatened the MLA who backed down. I find it bizarre, this self-hatred on the right. It's obvious that we agree on 99% of things with both of these parties, but to cut some ice with the CBC and the media party, both Andrew Scheer and Jason Kenney have made the political decision to bend the knee to the CBC and the Toronto Star and the Globe and Mail to listen to the mean girls of the media party rather than the media outlet that more accurately and fairly and comprehensively covers story of interest to the base. Does it hurt my feelings? Not particularly. We do what we do in any event, but it worries me in that if you're willing to bend the knee to the media party over trifles, when it doesn't count, a year or two before the election, imagine what you'll cave in to the media party on when it does count. And in my monologue tonight on my paywall show, you'll see a bit of that when we talk about Andrew Scheer pledging on CTV to reduce carbon emissions to abide by the UN Global Warming Treaty. That is so bizarre. And the only explanation I can think of that for Andrew Scheer is he wants to appease the CBC. That ain't going to happen. You will not buy their love. Isn't that the lesson of the White House Correspondents' Dinner? Don't play their game. Either ignore them. If you have to deal with them minimally. And honestly, don't suck up. Isn't that the lesson that Sarah Huckabee Sanders gave us? I see there's another super chat. I'll read it. Victoria Pisano. Sorry, quick question. You've got a laptop to see our chats. What are you using to make this live feed? I'm starting my own show and would love any tips. Great question. Again, we're just trying this out. We're figuring this out for the first time ourselves. I'm looking, you're right, on the laptop. I'm looking at our YouTube channel just like you are, and that's how I saw your comment. You can click on a link to find out what these they're called Google Super Chats are. And I think the one requirement is you need 1,000 subscribers to your channel to be able to do it. So you should build up that. But once you have that, really you just need a webcam and you're good to go. A webcam, we obviously have something a little bit fancier than that here. And as you saw, we played some video clips and we have a little bit of a background. So Victoria, my advice is, I don't know what your YouTube channel is, but you need to build up to 1,000 subscribers first. And we're trying it out today, and so far, no screw-ups. It's basically just a live video feed and comments and the odd comment that people chip in for. I'll read another one. Pamela Kingwell, Scheer should wake up. Well, see, let me say one more thing about Andrew Scheer. I got to tell you, and you may not believe me, but I like the guy. What's not to like? A good Saskatchewan boy, family man, modest living. Like he sort of is like Mike Pence in terms of his personal style. But unlike Mike Pence, he doesn't have a strong commitment to his ideas enough to lean into the hurricane. And I think that comes from his political experience. Remember, he was elected to Parliament very young. He was in his 20s. He was one of the youngest MPs, and he very quickly became Speaker of the House of Commons when when Stephen Harper became Prime Minister. And so when you're the Speaker of the House, you're not going to partisan events, you're not typically voting, so you're all about compromise and being gentle and splitting the difference and not fighting. Urethra Grundle, which I think might be a nickname, writes, keep up the good work and keep the vids coming. I'd like to see another section in Rebel about Liberal spending, budget, research, and explained. More light needs to be shone into the darkness of Liberal spending practices. Well, that's a great idea. And by the way, if Urethra is your real first name, I apologize for doubting it. One of our favorite regular guests are our friends from the Taxpayers Federation. I really like Aaron Woodrick. He's their Ottawa boss. We have Christine Rangein, who's fighting hard in Ontario, and I think she's about to have some good news. We love their Calgary team also, Colin Craig and Paige McPherson, who's on mat leave. So I feel like we have a special friendship with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and I gotta say, they're the most trustworthy people on this file, and they do good research, and they're completely nonpartisan. They don't take a dime from the government. So that's a bit of my ad for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. We should talk to the Fraser Institute more, too. They do good stuff, but I like the taxpayers' style. I think it's because the Fraser Institute is a registered charity, so they have to be a little more mild-mannered, and the Taxpayers Federation is like us. They're not a charity. They don't have to live under the thumb of bureaucrats, so they can be rambunctious, and we like that style. By the way, I think that this is the era of the taxpayer rising up again. Just like happened, I don't know, 20, 25 years ago with the GST, I think the carbon tax is being a huge rallying cry. But as to your specific question, having a section on the Rebel, we're retooling our website. We're doing it slowly. By the way, we have, for example, an app, and it's sort of in beta mode also. There's some quirks to it that we're wrinkling out, but it's out there, and we haven't really advertised it. I don't think we've sent out a big email about it. I know David Menzies mentions it at the end of his videos a lot, but we're trying to tweak things and fix things. So I do take your advice. We should have a section. Maybe we'll put that in the next remake. Now I see there's another super chat. I'm going to read it. Joaquim Jacobson, can you turn up the volume sound on the output? Thank you for that, and I just hear in my earpiece that our tech, Justin, has just done that. So hopefully that worked, and it looks like if I'm reading your your comment correctly, you're from Sweden, and I thank you for joining us. Just as a by the way, I have visited Sweden, which is something I'd never done before, and part of me wishes I never did visit Sweden, and I'll tell you why. Because my vision of Sweden before I went there about a year or two ago was so idyllic. It was utopian. It was everyone beautiful, everything beautiful, this progressive socialist welfare state where everyone was happy, Volvos, Saab, ABBA, happy. And when I went there, I saw that I'm out of date by about a generation on Sweden. There is still that Sweden, for sure. And there are many wonderful people there in Sweden, and I met a lot of them. But there's also terrible things going on in Sweden. It's got the fastest Islamification of all of Europe, even more than Germany. And because it's so progressive, because it's so tolerant, because they want to bend over backwards to prove, to take the other side of the story, they've bent over backwards so far their spines have shattered. And now, and I know it's shocking to say, but Sweden has one of the highest rates of rape in the world. This feminist country. I see another super chat. Let me read it. Island Ariel has chipped in $5. Thank you very much for that. But I don't see a comment there, Island Ariel. If you make another comment, I'll look to see if you have anything in particular you want to mention to me. I'll keep an eye peeled. But back to Sweden. I went there and I met a man, if I recall, his name is Lars Vilks, excuse me, who I won't tell you how I met him because it would give away operational security. I had to meet a police officer at a cafe. He vetted me and my cameraman. Then he took us to his waiting police car, told us to forget the route we were going, and we met Lars Vilks in a secure location. We had to go through metal detectors. I will not say where it was. It was shocking. And he was in full-time, around-the-clock hiding. I think it was worse than what Salman Rushdie, because Salman Rushdie goes out and about. We had to be vetted by police in a public space before we went into the police car to meet Lars Vilks. Can you believe that? Just because he criticized radical Islam. I met other Swedes who I think you would call them liberal. Swedes and Danes, they're just across the bridge from each other. They're Denmark and Sweden. Malmo's on the other side there from Copenhagen. These are liberal people who I think 20 years ago would have called themselves liberals or even leftists, or certainly they use the word progressive. And simply for speaking out for separation of mosque and state and women's rights, they're literally the subject of assassination attempts. Lars Hedegaard, I think that's the name of another gentleman, I'm going from memory, told me about the assassination attempt on his life. And that is happening. Grenade attacks in Sweden are so common, they don't even make the news anymore. I went to a neighbor, I see a new super chat. Let me just hop off this little tangent to take a look at that. I want to respect your questions. If you're asking me questions on the super chat, I want to answer. Viking Insane says, concerned about Canada's cultural heritage, the Liberals have ditched our nation's founder from the $10 bill into glorify victimhood instead. Well, that's certainly what Trudeau does, isn't it? And that's the Liberal way. That's Trudeau, and that's his father also, from changing our flag to changing our anthem. They want to zero things out, if they could, they would say it's not 2018. They would restart the 0 year at, I don't know, Pierre Trudeau's election, or maybe the Charter of Rights, as if we didn't have a history and a tradition before that. Canada did have quite a rich tradition, both a French and an English tradition, both of which are very interesting, both of which we can learn from, both of which have a lot of liberty in their history, and rule of law and tradition. And I think that throwing them out in the name of multiculturalism creates a void. And it's so strange to hear Justin Trudeau talk about that. He often talks about that to foreign media more than he does to Canadian media, doesn't he? He said, I mean, I don't have the quotes in front of me because I wasn't expecting that question, but he says that Canada has no underlying identity, as if we're just some airport hotel or something. Tomorrow it'll be someone else in the room, the next day someone else. That's not true. That's not true. And the reason that people come to Canada is not for our cold weather. It's not for the climate. It's in part because Trudeau has thrown open the doors to the welfare state now, and a lot of people are self-deporting from Donald Trump's America. Seriously, Haitians, Salvadorians, these are not people who typically come to Canada, but Trump's kicking them out, so Canada's taking them in. Yeah, people come here because we got a sucker as a prime minister, but people who choose to migrate here lawfully do so because they like the essence of our country. The essence of our country in Canada is the same as the essence in America, or similar. It's not the weather. It's not the raw resources under the ground. It's not even the geography. It's our culture. It's our culture. And by culture, I don't mean race. And I don't even mean religion, although our religion does underpin our culture, obviously. It's where the Ten Commandments comes from. It's where our notions of mercy and charity come from. And I think what's fascinating, we send our friend David Menzies out to do streeters, and once in a while I get out and do streeters too. And whenever we talk to new Canadians about immigration, the hardest line people are new immigrants, especially visible minorities. And I think the reason is, first of all, they came in the proper way and they're mad at the queue jumpers. Second of all, they don't want the bad apples giving them a name. If you're a newcomer from a foreign country and bad apples come from your country here, you don't want your name to be tarnished by that. I have a lot of Sikh friends who are really mad at Trudeau for hanging out with that convicted terrorist Jaspal Atwal, because they're saying, Ezra, that's not us, that's not the Sikh community. And I know that, but Trudeau has emphasized that part of the Sikh community, the minuscule part. But the final reason I think visible minorities are the hardest line on immigration, when we find them in streeters, you know what I mean, vox pop, just talk to people on the street, It's because they're not afraid of being called racist. When you're an immigrant from the Caribbean or whatnot, you're not worried about some liberal journalist misconstruing it. So you say, frankly, vet them. Don't let the terrorists in. Don't let the troublemakers in. That's my favorite thing about doing Streeters in Toronto, is talking to the new Canadians. They are culturally more conservative than Justin Trudeau. I'm glancing at the clock here. It's 12:49. I've been talking for 49 minutes straight, which is normally what I call a warm-up. Just a reminder of what we're doing here today. It's the first time we're doing it. Just over 400 people watching. We didn't announce this. I don't even think we tweeted about it. We didn't email people. We just sort of snuck it in. We're trying it out. It's called Ezra Levant's Battleground. I like to battle things every day. Today I battled the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and to call her a comedian stretches that word beyond its plasticity. It was an unfunny comedian taking a run at every woman who works around Donald Trump and then going on a little ad for Planned Parenthood that was pretty gross. So yeah, it's called Ezra Levant's Battleground because I battle. But you can battle with me, and I frankly was expecting a few more hostile comments in the Super Chat. Let me just say how it works. Super Chat, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, there's a constant stream of comments, and I'm glancing at them. Yeah, there's one from Joaquin Jacobson again. See, that's called a super chat. If you kick in a couple bucks or 20 Swedish kroner, you can have your comment really highlighted, and then it stays on the screen for me to look at. So, as Joaquin says, as you said, Sweden has changed beyond recognition. I see out of the corner of my eye, because you can see my screen share, I see out of the corner of my eye when that bright color comes on, so I go in and read those super chats. The rest of the time I'm talking to camera. So this podcast, I'm calling it a video podcast. It'll be available every day after it's live. So it's going to be live from noon till 1 if we keep going with it. I mean, let me know. Let me know if you think it's worth doing. I mean, I could do other things with my day, but I'm having a little bit of fun. And we'll make it available for a regular podcast without the video. I don't think you're going to lose that much. We had some video clips, 5 clips from the White House Correspondents' Dinner, but it's not that much. And like I say, if you really want to get something to me, this is a way to do it. And by the way, I expected more criticism. I mean, maybe I should look. You have many, many fans, Ezra. We know you are no hater. Thanks, Jonathan. The Green Knight, I can abuse you if you like, Ezra. Well, I shouldn't say yes to that, but if you have a tough question, go ahead and put it. I like to think that we're fairly transparent here. We don't always get it right. I mean, I was just looking at our YouTube channel today. We've published more than 8,000 videos in our 3 years, and I don't know, what's that, 20,000 written stories to accompany them. So you're not going to get it right every time. Even if you're getting it right 99% of the time, that's 80 screw-ups. Every media company gets it wrong sometimes, especially if you're coloring outside the lines a little bit. I mean, we're not called the establishment. We're called the rebel. Our talent is rebellious. We're a little bit prickly, a little bit crotchety. And so, yeah, we're gonna be a bit rough, probably more often than the vanilla pablum of the mainstream media. My main beef with the mainstream media is not its left-wing tilt. It's its sheer boringness and sameness. Wouldn't you agree? In some ways, I find a greater fraternity with left-wing alternative media than I do with the mainstream media that's more moderate. Let me read some more, and these are not the super chat ones. I'm just reading randomly. Jonathan Bryant, we need an Atlantic Canadian reporter. You're right. You know, I reached out to my old friend Chris Sims, who used to be based in the Atlantic, but I think she's moved over to the Taxpayers Federation. I got to know her at Sun News. She was just great. I want someone like that, really grassroots, really connected to the land. Annette Lang again, face it, Justin Trudeau supports worldwide terrorism with our tax dollars. Well, I don't know of any direct links like that other than giving money to Hamas-run Gaza, which of course, Hamas is a terrorist organization, so I take your point. The researcher says, what do you think regarding the low birth rate in the West? Is feminism one of its causes? Well, of course feminism is one of its causes. When people delay marriage much longer, when women choose to work instead of to be moms, there's going to be a lower birth rate. That's not even a question. I think the question is that good? Is it bad? What are the pros and cons? So I don't even think that's a question. I mean, and it's been going on for longer than just a few years. I mean, the advent of the birth control pill did that. I think a lot of women are questioning who won that battle of the sexes. I mean, were women liberated, or were men more liberated from their responsibility, having consequence-free sex? It's something that a lot of thoughtful people like Christina Hoff Sommers talk about, and even our friend Barbara Kay. By the way, I love having Barbara Kay as a guest on my evening show every day at 8 p.m. I do a show behind a paywall. But she did some videos for us, and if you go on our YouTube page, search for Barbara Kay's video on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, which was a hot show in the 70s. Versus Girls, that awful, awful show by Lena Dunham. I did not think I would find that an interesting video because it was a very female-centric story and old-timey Mary Tyler Moore, but I found it so riveting and so touching and very thought-provoking and a little bit sad also. I recommend that if you haven't seen that. All right, let me read a few more. It's 12:55. We got 5 more minutes. If you want to get your super chat in there, now's the time to do it. Greg Wade, low birth rates due to education and people being told for years that it is irresponsible to have lots of children. Well, that's true. I mean, I hate there really is an anti-child narrative out there. You see it in so many of these clickbait sites like BuzzFeed and Vice. They're really anti-parenting. There's a snobbery there that their jobs are better than the job of being a mom. And it's not just a choice anymore. Like I said earlier, pro-choice people on abortion typically say abortion is safe, legal, and rare. But that Michelle Fox, the comedian, was pro-abortion. It's different. And I would say the same about choosing. Women have the right to choose. I support women having the right, obviously, to choose to be in the world of work. But the demonization of women who make the other choice, that's the analogy I'm making with Michelle Fox demonizing the baby that's aborted as opposed to saying it's a choice. All right, 4 minutes left in the podcast today. I think we'll do a little postmortem here afterwards and see if it was worth doing. I thought it was fun. It's an hour of my time. I mean, I don't do a lot of prep in advance. I just chose the 5 clips today. As you can see, I can talk the hind leg off a horse. One last question from Joaquin Jacobson. What I have seen, no one in Sweden wants to get children when the country has been dismantled. Well, Joaquin, let me close with an anecdote. And again, if you want to see this video, a couple of years ago, I went to Sweden. I went to Malmo, which is the city right across from Copenhagen. Malmo, a generation ago, was a hardworking industrial town, blue collar. There was shipbuilding. Reminds me of Hamilton, Ontario. Shipbuilding's gone, though, and the new industry there is refugees. And I know that sounds crazy. What kind of industry is that? Well, social workers, welfare, police, crime, drugs. I hate to say that's what it is. And to see for myself, I went to a neighborhood in Malmo called Rosengård, which used to be sort of a student housing complex, I think. That's what it was told to me as a guide who took us there. It's 99% Muslim now, this neighborhood. I mean, Malmo is about half Muslim, but it's not Muslim house, Christian house, Muslim house, Christian house. There's a Muslim section and a Christian section, and Rosengård is 90, well, let me put it this way. I saw one non-Muslim civilian there the entire time. I saw a couple of security guards who were non-Muslim, and I saw one white Swedish woman, and I saw her after spending the entire day there. By the way, we had some pretty heavy-duty security because, like I said, stabbing. I mean, and you could see we were being eyeballed by sort of watchmen and people following us, and who were they, and are they there to make trouble, or are the police coming in? Anyways, I met this one Swedish woman, and I went up to her and I said, "How do you feel? This is, the Sweden you grew up in is completely gone." And to hear her series of talking points. First she said, well, we need people, we Swedes are not having enough kids. We need people to take care of us. And I pointed out that most of these refugees were not working, that Swedes were in fact taking care of them. She moved on to the next talking point and the next talking point. Well, we have a duty to help them. Oh, I thought you just said this was for them to help you. Well, what about when communities like Malmo become majority Muslim and they start taking Swedish values out and putting Sharia values in? I interviewed Muslim Malmo citizens born in Sweden who were calling for Sharia law. So what happens when 50, 60, 70% of the population of Malmo believes in Sharia law. And I'd say right now it's coming up on half. She said, and I asked her that. I said, is there any limit to the number of refugees Sweden could take? She said, no. I said, well, what happens when they change the laws and it's no longer Swedish? Hell, what happens when they change the country's name? Why would it stay called, why would you call it Sweden? I mean, they changed the name Constantinople to Istanbul. Why would it be called Sweden? She said, oh, well, as long as we have our beautiful nature, it's still fine. It was the most pitiful conversation I ever had, frankly. Well, folks, that's the close of our 1-hour test run, beta test, try it out of this Google Super Chat. And what do you think? I was super chatty. You guys were sort of chatty. I think I got through about 10 comments. I think I read all the Super Chats, thanks to those of you who chipped in for that. I think, I feel like it went pretty well. Let me know what you think. Put your comments there. Did you think it's worth doing? Would you tune in again? We had about I think we maxed out about 450 people listening, which, we could do a lot better if we advertised in advance. I didn't, it's sort of, I was a little bit chicken. I thought maybe we'd have some technical problems. We hadn't done it before. It was sort of new. I think it worked. I think it worked out okay. I'd like to do it. I mean, I like chatting for an hour. It takes a little bit of time out of my day, but it's worth it. Let me know. Leave your comments here. And if you agree with me that I think it went okay, I'll see you again tomorrow. I'll cover a story like I did today with the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I'll try and bring some viz. I'll try and bring some more photos and websites and stuff, and maybe I'll call for them in real time from our producers there. I like the fact that we ran some clips. But other than that, I think I'd say not a bad soft launch. That's it for me. I'm Ezra Levant. I'm the Rebel Commander here at the Rebel.media. You've been watching Ezra Levant's Battleground. Until tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern. Goodbye, and hey, you keep fighting too. See ya.